Welcome to Alex and Annie, the real women of vacation rentals. I'm Alex.
And I'm Annie.
And we are joined today with Mr. Mark Simpson, who is the founder of Boostly. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. This is very exciting. I was saying before we started recording, this is off my bucket list of podcasts I wanted to come on to. So thank you for having me.
Oh, that's exciting. I'm glad that we're on somebody's bucket list.
I know.
That's pretty cool. We're excited to have you here today and talk about all the things that you are involved in, which there are plenty of them. Yeah, you are very much an advocate of the Book Direct movement, which I think our audience is also very interested in. And Annie and I have a lot of experience in Book Direct type strategies and OTA strategies too, but certainly knowing how to drive that direct traffic is really important. You also just wrote a book, but before we get into that, why don't you tell our audience a little bit more about you and your history?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been involved in hospitality and short stay accommodation since the age of 4. I pretty much when I was born onto a 200-acre farm in the middle of nowhere in the United Kingdom. The little town was called Scarborough. So if you've got any UK visitors, you'll know what Scarborough is. Very touristy area. And it happened in the very early 90s where my parents needed to diversify their farm and they went down the route of accommodation. So they tore down a barn, turned it into a four-bedroom guest house. And this is before Expedias and the booking.coms and online or anything. So they basically had to market their business through word of mouth and magazine ads, etc. But it worked really well because the farm stay sort of brand back then was nobody was doing it, and they were one of the first, and they definitely had first mover status. And over the years, I'm growing up in this business, and it was getting really popular and busy. And they tore down another barn and added another 10 rooms on, and it got busier and busier, and the word of mouth was going. And I'm a young teenager serving breakfast, going to school, coming back, serving evening meal, meeting so many amazing people. I just got to the point where I was so used to always having people in my house. Just imagine walking into your kitchen as there's somebody, and that was me until the age of 19, 20, when I then had an amazing opportunity to become a soccer coach. And I got my qualifications, and then I spent 6-7 years traveling to America every single year for 6 months at a time. Got to travel to every single state. I've been to both the states that you two are based out of, and had some amazing times, Myrtle Beach and Florida and on the West Coast as well. And then in 2011, moved back to the family business. And that's where I came in full time, me and my wife and my eldest, who was 1 at the time, who's now 9. And over the sort of the 5-6 years there, really helped get the business online. And we got to a point where we were the most recommended business on TripAdvisor, which was fantastic. This is when TripAdvisor was a thing back in 2016. And we were the most followed social media business in our area. So the independent business on Facebook, which was fantastic. And we just took that offline word of mouth, brought it online. And then in 2016, I started to go to local tourism meetings. And at these meetings, it was full of other hosts and guest house owners, bed and breakfast owners, rental owners. And they were sort of really puzzled with the new age of marketing, social media and etc. And they were having to rely on booking.com for bookings and Expedia for bookings. And I just started asking questions, finding out if there was any support for these hosts. And there wasn't on a local level, there wasn't on a county level or a state level, and there was no tourism help. So, I just created a Facebook group called the Hospitality Community, and it's still there now. And it was just for local hosts. And I just every day just shared a little tip, whether it's a Facebook tip or a Twitter tip or a whatever tip. And I just started doing it every day, and people showed up, and people from around the UK wanted to join and requested to join. I thought, this is interesting. And then people from Germany and France and Spain and Australia and America. And before I knew it, we had thousands of hosts from all over the world who were just showing up because they wanted help when it came to direct bookings.
Wow.
And so I built a community. And then in 2017, me and my wife, we wanted to travel again because we've always traveled. Even before I met my wife, she was a traveler. And so me and Alfie and Frank, and my other child, Charlie, we basically started traveling. And at that time, I thought, well, there's something I can do here where we can travel, and we could have, I could build something where I could help hosts all around the world. And the goal was just to get free accommodation where we could rock up somewhere and
right.
help somebody. And then what's transpired from that is pretty crazy, to be honest. Now it's to a point where 2022, I wrote a book, a best-selling book, which is amazing. I've helped over 1,000 hosts, whether it's training or website design. And yeah, my main mission now, my main goal is to help 1 million hosts cut down on the over-reliance on the OTAs and to help them show how they can get their own bookings directly through whatever means it may be. And yeah, I'm really excited. This is just the beginning. And thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to having a nice discussion about just how I've grown everything and share any tips along the way.
Yeah, oh gosh, there's so much there to unpack, Mark. That's awesome too. And I mean, what an amazing business you've built in a relatively short amount of time. But I think you've seen the business change, extensively since, those early days, certainly on the farm, but even in the community when you first started that. But the first question that comes to mind, and I'm sure there's different differences from where you are versus where we are in the States, but the individual hosts that you started with that you were helping, were they directly themselves putting those properties on Booking and Expedia, or were they just on Vrbo and Airbnb?
Yeah, I feel like in the UK and Europe, I definitely feel, and this could be more so when you look at hotels and small guest houses in the States, but when you've got a bed and breakfast, for example, or you've got a small hotel, you are more going to have a property management software, a PMS. Mm-hmm. And because of that, you're just naturally going to then list your properties on the online sites like booking.com and Expedia, where the two big ones back in 2015, 2016. Airbnb really sort of ramp it up a little bit later. And so what I found was, and what I noticed was that it was so easy to get a booking from booking.com and Expedia. They didn't really need to do much because it's so in demand. This industry that we are in is so in demand. And you literally can just put a couple of pictures up on a couple of OTAs. And especially if you're in say a touristy location, you could very easily sell your property out 2 or 3 or 4 times over with the help of the OTAs. And it's a blessing and it's a curse, because it's a blessing because it is so easy to bring in revenue, but it's a curse because then you become so over-reliant.
Right.
And when you become so over-reliant on one platform, say like booking.com or Airbnb or Expedia, then you are playing in someone else's sandbox.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you become over-reliant, you go, oh, well, I'll stop doing this. I'll stop doing whatever, like Mark and I was doing. And then something could happen. Like your account could get hacked into. I've seen that. You could get a couple of really bad reviews. I've seen that. And you just drop off the algorithm.
Yeah.
Or for whatever reason, you just may stop getting reviews. And that's when it really hurts. So yeah, it was a lot of people were struggling. And I definitely notice it really now, especially when I speak to hosts in America who are, just on Airbnb. I really noticed that more than ever, because they haven't even got a PMS, a channel manager. They haven't got somebody helping them. So they're just so reliant on one platform. And I think that's a massive pain point right now in our industry.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious. So I was in property management, and then I was at Expedia for a few years. And when I was first at Expedia, the first year and a half or so, that was when booking.com came over from the Europe and was really making a play for the States. But one thing that I noticed was, in just talking with people since I've been on the channel management side of things, is that the vacation rental industry in Europe, it's been around, like it's been going on, and it was part of the traditional OTAs, if you will, for a long time. And there was a hesitancy in the States for people to work with those channels. So they did become, I think that's how the Airbnb and the Vrbo was able to kind of harness that. There was the growth going on, and they were harnessing that audience and not allowing the regular OTAs to kind of step into that space. But for you, do you see the same amount of difference that I know I saw a few years ago now when you're talking to a UK provider versus a US provider on the rental side?
I feel like now, when you're talking about booking.com that's come over to the States, and say Airbnb that's come over to the UK, I definitely feel like we're at an equal par now. And I definitely feel like in America, and bearing in mind, for full context, I probably speak to hosts who have got one property to about maybe say 50. So you'll have the hosts that have got maybe 1 or 2 properties, or then you've got the property managers that have got more than 4, 5, 6, up to about 50. Very irregularly will I speak to people consistently who have got 100 plus. So it's like the sort of smaller end of the scale. Right. And what I've definitely noticed in the last year and a half, ever since the pandemic started and all of the things that have happened, is that property managers and hosts now in United States, more so than ever, have realized that they can't put all of our eggs in one basket. They can't just be on one platform. They do need to be diversified to a point, and they do need to be multi-platform. They do need to have a presence on Booking.com. They do need to have a presence on Verbo, and they have to get a property management software. And I think that's been a major kick to it, because we all know what happened in March. We all know what happened with Airbnb, where they just cancelled everybody's stays and all of the refunds. And I feel like that's where people go, okay, I've got to do something about it, which in a crazy way has been one of the major growths in Boostly. We had a 200% growth in 2020, and we had a massive amount of that growth came from the States, because people were going, okay, I know I need to do this thing called direct bookings. You know,
Right.
I've put it off for so long.
Right.
This
Yeah.
thing.
And it's just
Like a
very
dance.
fortunate that for the 5 years before that, I've been talking about direct bookings every single
Yeah.
day, every single week.
Yeah.
And I was just in the right place at the right time. And it's been so cool to help so many people in America. I get so many messages on Instagram from people in America and Canada and even Australia that had just been provided just solely on one channel and now want to be diversified, which is great.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. I mean, what's happened in the professional management industry in the last year since COVID, and there was two tracks that people took during the pandemic. Either they had all their eggs in one basket on Airbnb, and they really got taken to the cleaners on that because they didn't get the money that they were supposed to have and be able to pay their owners and all those types of terrible situations that we heard about. And then after that, the OTAs that were not spending any money, now they did not have a way to market the properties that were definitely wide open at that point. Or you have the people that decided, okay, we've already been building a Book Direct type of a company for a few years, many years, whichever is the case. And now we're going to go straight to the search engines, and we're going to put that money into PPC because we're not competing directly with the OTAs. And that's what we did at Condo World. And I know several other companies within our destination here and in Annie's area in Florida that had that mindset really were able to catapult our growth because of not having that competition. I mean, our cost per clicks were significantly less, and we were able to just attract a wider range of people that we're still now, we've got so many new guests that came from that push that the pandemic was terrible, but at the same time, that really made a big difference for us. But it's, Book Direct has been something that we've focused on since, the dawn of time. I mean, even back before OTAs, our owner, of course, was trying to cut costs to not have to do as many newspaper ads or, all the ways that we used to advertise. So it's really just a cost of advertising is what that means. But it's interesting to see how things have changed throughout the years there, and the emphasis that has really started to focus on it now.
Yeah, I think one thing as well, if anybody like Condo World has really wanted to take a push to the search engines and do PPC, then coming out of 2020, in that middle of 2020 was the perfect time to sort of give it a go, because the Booking.com and everybody, they scaled back their advertising costs so much because they had to. So there's definitely a play in, obviously you've been speaking to Pete at Fuel Travel and the rebrand and stuff. They are so much more clever and switched on that sort of side of things than I am, and they are perfect people to chat to about that because they are so switched on with that sort of thing. But I definitely feel like there's a really good opportunity now for property managers at a lower end or a higher level that can take advantage of the fact that guests now are more inclined to click around. They are more inclined to not just go to one place. They will click around because they now know that they can get a better rate or they can get better incentives. And the whole reason why I started Boostly was because I knew that there's so many benefits of Booking Direct, and just there's so good marketing going on at Expedia, at Booking.com and at Airbnb, which drives people to their sites. But I wanted to re-educate the guests, and that's what I've been doing at the family business since 2011, re-educating the guests. So by leaving little placards in the rooms, by sending emails, by talking to them, because the beauty of being on the site at the family business is that I checked in every guest. I walked from the check-in to the room, and I sort of got to speak to them, like first-hand surveys of like why they booked and how did they book and how did they find us and whatnot. And it was awesome. But what I realized is that I couldn't re-educate the guests. What I needed to do was re-educate the hosts.
Yeah.
Because once I re-educate the host, if I can re-educate 1 million hosts, then they will then be able to re-educate their guests. And that is how we get the attention of the OTAs. That is how, we can be seen not just as a number, but we can actually be seen as a partner. So I think that's where it's really important to keep on doing this.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that COVID just changed, it changed the power. It went from the OTAs being in power to the PMCs having that power. And I think that that's one thing that I like to see out of COVID. Again, there's a lot of positives that came out of it, as bad as it was, is that the collective voice kind of came together and coalesced around this conversation of direct booking and like, let's cut the fees. And I'm a channel manager, so I sit in this weird space of like, I want to advocate for the property manager because I've been a property manager and I understand that, but I also need to advocate for using the channels and kind of diversifying, that path of distribution. But I think it's put this whole community kind of on footing it's a much stronger footing than they were on before
Yeah,
COVID.
Annie, I'm glad you said that too, because I think that's what makes you unique in what you do. And really, Mark, the same thing for you as well. And honestly, I think for me too at World, because when you have that diverse perspective, the advice you're going to offer is more, I mean, it's just more holistic, and it's going to be better, I think, overall, versus being so granular in one thing, because you have to look at it that way. I mean, what's best for your customer is not just always for them to book on the OTAs, which is going to benefit you.
Absolutely.
What's best for Mark is not just for them to always book direct. Same thing with World. I mean, but you have to have that even balance. And I think sometimes it's just depending on which vendor you're talking to, it's their way or the highway. And it's important to have that different perspective.
What I really agree is, and this is really important to stress, is that when I talk about direct bookings, people just naturally assume that I say you have to go cold turkey on the online travel agents, but that's so not what I'm saying. Our family business was in the middle of nowhere. It was a farm in the middle of the North Yorkshire moors. It should never have got the attention it did, and we would never have got that attention if we hadn't have listed on Booking.com. Booking.com opened up the potential guests that could see us on a national and an international level. And I was doing a lot of promotion and podcasting on the Book Direct Day, which was in February, which Amy Hino, I know you've had her on the show, massive fan of, and was a promoter of it for like 5-6 years. She started it off. And when I was doing Book Direct Day, somebody played devil's advocate with me and said, well, should you go 100% direct bookings? And they were going to assume that I said, yes, but I said, no, you can't go 100% book direct, because what you're going to do is, again, you're putting all your eggs in one basket, and anything could happen. You could lose access to your emails, your database could go. You've got to have that balance and that split. And if there's any business owner, if there's any vendor or anybody who's watching this and they're trying to think of like a little takeaway to take from it, is that you have to make sure you spread all of your marketing, and all of your business has to be split evenly. You can't just be solely reliant on word of mouth. Because what happens if people stop talking about you? So you have to make sure and you're diversified. So it's really important that we would sort of get that across.
I had an experience in my market. So I was at a management company and then made the grave misstep of starting another management company right about the time the economy crashed. And then we had an oil spill in the Gulf, and fighting against what social media was putting out there. And again, fake media, people were telling stories and saying that they had seen, all of this oil on the beach and they'd seen it everywhere and the beaches were terrible and people were dying. And it was just all this stuff that we would get out literally every day, my husband and I, and do just a quick YouTube video from the beach to say, look at the beach, it's beautiful, there's nothing going on here. Just because there was no advertising that we could do that was going to combat what people thought the gossip was at the grocery store. But if it had not have been for Expedia at that time for us, we wouldn't have had any business that summer. I mean, they saved our skin. And I've always been very, big advocate of absolutely have a plan to get as much direct business as you can, but you've got to have somebody there when you fall. Everybody's going to trip and fall, and you got to have somebody to help you. So the OTAs, while yes, they get a bad rap and they're the 500-pound gorilla in the room, they're aligned. They want to help book business just like you do. Yeah, they're taking a piece of it, but you're giving a piece of it to Google every time you pay for an ad. So it's dependent on who do you want to give the money to, what's your best ROI. And we
can definitely see that the industry has grown so much because of Airbnb and Vrbo and the exposure and just, magnification that is given to our industry. So
Yeah.
you can't completely count them out and,
You try.
and say you don't like them, but
Yeah.
you just got to work with them. That's the end of the day. That's the best thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So so Mark, you wrote this book. Was this, I apologize. I've read a little bit of the blurbs that you shared with us on our Clubhouse group, but have not gotten the whole book. Was it just all this experience that you had that you decided you needed to put all these tips and tricks down into writing and publish?
Let me get a copy first. I've got one here. So it's called
Of course
book.
you do. Yes.
So if you're watching on the YouTube, it is very
YouTube.
much, you look at the camera, it's called the Book Direct Playbook. And so basically the reason why I wrote it is that I've recorded nearly 500 podcast episodes. I have done nearly like 1,000 blog posts, and I can't even think posts on social media. So there's lots and lots and lots out there, but yet still I get people in my inbox, in the Facebook group, in the comments, asking questions. And I'm like, well, I've got a video, it's right here. But for whatever reason, it's like, it's really hard to divert them. So about a year and a half ago, I had a conversation on the beach in Spain with Julie George, another guest of yours.
Yeah, I love Julie.
And she was the one who gave me the kick up the ass, so to speak, to do it. And she basically said, Mark, at the end of the day, a book is going to be your business card. It's going to be like the thing that not only that you will remember in years to come, but it'll be something that you can pass on to your kids when they get older, etc. And I just sort of stopped and I thought, well, okay, if I can come up with a book, and I don't want it to be autobiographical, I don't want it to just be about my life and my story. I want it to be something that is going to help and benefit hosts. And I'm a massive fan of books. I think we're talking beforehand, I'm a massive fan of Mike Michalowicz, a very big author. Sorry, my camera's a bit out of focus. I can just see here, so I have to put my hand here. I'm also a massive fan of Tim Ferriss. Yeah. And my favorite ever book is Tools of Titan. And with Tools of Titan, he basically took his 200 podcast episodes and he put the best of into this one book. And the book isn't something that you read from page 1 to page 300. Mm-hmm. It's a book that you go in, you find the chapter and go, okay, I want to learn more about this, and you skim to it. And like I say, I used to be a soccer coach, and I would always have a playbook with me at the side of the pitch. So when I was coaching, when I was working, when I was either running a drill or running a game, I would have my playbook. And if I wanted to run a certain drill on passing or shooting or goalkeeping, whatever, I would open my playbook, I would go to it, I'd find the chapter, I would do it, we would implement it, and then I would review it afterwards. So when I came to sort of draft out the idea of the book, I was like, well, what could I do? And it just came back to this playbook idea. So I took 10 years of what I've been doing. I thought, well, what are my top 100 tips? And I just put them into this. So anything from how to get your customer avatar, how to do email marketing, how to set up a website, how to be a content creation machine, how to build relationship, how to get corporate bookings. It's all in here. And when I announced it in the group, the first 5 out of 10 comments was, well, why are you writing a marketing book? It could literally go out of date by the time it gets released. And so that was always at the back of my mind.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so what I did was I created everything that was going to be generic. So it's generic advice. It basically, social media is the tactics that you share is the same for every single platform. So for example, if I'd have started writing about Musical.ly is no more, it's now TikTok, and LinkedIn has changed so much and Snapchat has disappeared. So the advice that I share is more about the psychological aspect of social media and how it can be generic. So that if my Alfie, for example, who's now 9, in 10 or 20 years time, if he decides to get into hospitality and short-term rental, he can pick this up and put it into practice. So, but what I did is I created an online course as part of this book. So everybody who buys the book, you get a special little code. You then go to the online course, and there's so many videos and resources and tools that I'll always be able to update behind the scenes. So it doesn't matter whether you buy it now in 2022 or if you get it in 2032, that will always be updated and be accessible. And
that's awesome.
And yeah, it's very interactive. The first chapter of the book is that I ask people to send me a message and tell me who their customer avatar is. And this has been the best thing. Just getting messages from people that I've never conversed with before on Instagram saying, hey, I'm reading the book or I'm listening to the book and this is my customer avatar. Makes my day. And it's the best thing that I've ever done.
Oh, that's so cool. That's awesome. And
is.
I love that it's an audiobook too. That's going to be how I consume it because I do just about everything on audio. But tell us about that experience. That must have been different going through that.
Harrowing.
So you're not going to do it again?
Well, if I do it again, if I do, then, you know, I will definitely be a lot more relaxed. I will definitely be a lot more calmer. And I won't be panicking as much as when I did record it, because I would do it in such a different order as well. Because normally what happens when it comes to the audiobook is that you wait for the book to be released and then you record the audio. And I'm very fortunate that I know lots of amazing people who put books out and whatnot, and they're all giving me advice, but I was just Mr. Stubborn British guy who just, I know I'm going to do it this way and da 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 da. Anyway, so I recorded the audio 2 weeks before the printed version was due to come out. And I was panicking because I again, one bit of advice for any author is don't have a set release date. Don't have a set release date and don't announce it publicly as well. Because every author told me don't have a set date, but I did it because I wanted it to go out on Book Direct Day.
Yeah.
Seeing that Book Direct Day was the 2nd of February, 2022. So 2222. It was like,
oh yeah, what a great day to do it.
Yeah, and this book had 222 pages in it. So it was like, I was so
it was perfect. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
I had all the promotion, I had all the planning, I had all the sponsorships and all of the affiliations and everything lined up for the second. And yeah, 2 weeks beforehand, 2 days in the freezing cold. We were in between moving houses as well. I had to get it done. Luckily I discovered a very good recording studio and a team that was so patient with me. But I mean, the best way to describe it is right now you pick up pick up the book and just try and read a page. And when you read it, you just read it like we're talking right now.
Yeah.
But when you record in an audiobook, you have to go slow, you have to stop, you have to reread. And it was so stressful, but we got there, we did it. And it's really interesting now, me hearing the book. So I've got it on Audible and I listen to it back and I can just tell how nervous I am for the first, say, 10, 20 pages. And after that, it gets a lot more confident. In fact, I've had people who've been following me for about five years now who said, who've got the Audible and they send me a message on WhatsApp saying, I can tell how nervous you are. I'm just like, oh.
Isn't it amazing though? I mean, you being a podcaster, you know that too. The first few episodes where you listen to yourself, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I used to hate even listening to myself on a voicemail, and you just have to push through that. And hopefully you start to improve as you listen to yourself over time. But that's definitely a challenge in any of this.
Well, it's like taking yourself out of the comfort zone, taking yourself outside of your comfort zone, you're only going to improve. So ever since I started this, I mean, Boostly was everything. And if Boostly wasn't successful, then, you know, our family wouldn't have been eating. It was like, that's like literally as how it is. So it's like, you're just taking yourself out of that comfort zone and just stepping forward. And as long as you're always taking yourself outside the comfort zone, you're only going to improve. So hopefully the next book, if there is one, and I do an audio, I'll be better.
I think there's going to be like a second edition of this. You'll have to update it. Of course, you'll learn a bunch of new things to share.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Hopefully one day, if enough people want it, and you know, it'll be a long way down the line. Then yeah, I have to recover after this one first because it's barely a month old. So
yeah, you've got a ways to go.
So did you have a goal for how many books that you wanted to sell, like right out of the gate with your editor or publisher?
See, you're never really going to make money on a book.
Yeah.
And again, this is a big worry to me, because since writing this book, I had to, didn't have any other option. I had to put it on Amazon. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I had to, there's no other way I could have get this book. Right. I could have done it directly. Okay. And Amazon started all those years ago with Jeff Bezos in his garage just posting out books. And now it has grown so much. And it literally monopolized the book market, the e-commerce market, and who knows what's next. And I look at hospitality and I look at Airbnb and I look at the growth. And since 2016, Airbnb has been the scrappy little OTA that's tried to take on Expedia and Booking.com. Now in 2022, it's a fair argument to say they're above them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you know, it's no coincidence that they've raised their commission from 3% to 14%. And as you know, Annie,
Yeah.
Expedia for like 15%,
Yeah.
Booking.com 15% is very on purpose.
Yeah.
And so what happens now is if Airbnb grows and grows and grows and grows, and it's literally now on this big marketing spiel to get more and more hosts. They say, listen, we need millions of hosts.
Yep.
And they're hosting, they're very clever. They're targeting Verbo people to get onto their platform. What happens if they get so popular and literally they are the dominant market leader, and they go to a host and they can see all of their bookings and go, well, Mr. and Mrs. Host, I can see that we provide 80% of your bookings. I don't think a 14% commission is about right. I think this is more 30% commission or 4%, or if this is a 50-50 relation. Like for me with Amazon, for every book that I sell, I only get 30%. So I pay 70%.
Wow.
It's a lot of commission.
Yeah.
And you look at Amazon, you look at Airbnb, and you look at the what's happening and how it's trying to grow. And this is why it's important for me to keep saying what I'm saying of talking about Book Direct, to show hosts that, listen, you can do this yourself. You can do these little marketing tactics and tips. It is a lot easier than what you make it out to believe. It doesn't have to be Google ads. It doesn't have to be Facebook ads. You don't have to spend money. In fact, every single tip in here costs you nothing to do. So,
well, think about it. You're trying to tell people it's Book Direct, but you are trying to get them to buy your book directly. So it's a whole different meaning for Book Direct.
I literally I cannot have anybody buy this book for me direct, because there's no way for me to get
There's no way. Really? Oh, wow.
There's no way. I haven't got a printing machine behind me. For once, I have to use to use Amazon's, like it's literally it's crazy, but it is what it is. As to answer your question, like there's no goal on numbers or anything like that. I'm very happy that I've actually had a return of investment, because I had to pay to get it out there to the world and those sort of things. Investment, which was amazing. Like Julie George, like she gave me the kick up the bum all those years ago. Like I say all those years ago, it was only 18 months, but it's like this is now my business card. And so many people have messaged me asking a question, and it's just buy this book. Just go and buy this book, and it's a tenner, so it's $10 or whatever it may be. And again, this is going to be something that I will have for years and years and years and years to come. So when I go to an event or a conference, I'll have this with me, and just be a great sort of way to sort of get people more aware of what I'm doing, and Boostly and the Book Direct movement. So it surpassed any individual goals that I had, and I got it to the bestseller. I mean, that's
amazing. That's so wonderful.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And that's cool.
I think, Annie, we need to start working on a book, it sounds like.
I guess. We'll have Mark read it for us.
In our spare time.
Yeah. But what a great thing. And one thing that we've learned, and Alex and I've learned just through ourselves, is that, and Amber Hurdle was our very first guest, and she kind of really pushed us. She was probably our Julie George, like as we were doing this, was that, all of your strengths and your gains and your successes are going to come if you push through that fear. You just have to do it. And if you just get past it, you look back and you're like, okay, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. But for these owners, these individual people, what you were saying is they just think it's so overwhelming for them to try to do some of these things. And to set some of it up, you got to put some time into it. But once you get a routine going, it all makes sense and it works. And I think that they just have to get over that, this is the way I've always done it attitude, and try all of these great tips that you share with them. I registered on your website as a host to see how that all worked. And I mean, you bombarded me with a whole bunch of really cool stuff and questions and things that I was like, gosh, I never even thought to ask that when I was in property management, let alone asking a property manager some of these questions. So your passion is clearly driving Boostly and your success. And so I just applaud you. And it's been great to virtually meet you in some of the Clubhouse chats and see you succeed, and you share all this stuff on LinkedIn, and I'm so happy for you.
No, thank you. And I am a fan of the show, and it is awesome to be on here. And I've listened to the one you did at the start of March, and one of the core little takeaways that I took from that episode is a theme that's been throughout this whole series of you running these podcasts is just do it. What's the worst that can happen? And that stuck with me massively since listening to that episode. And it's definitely what I've had a recurring theme is just do it. What is the worst that can happen? And I feel like that has definitely been the core driving factor behind Boostly, behind a podcast, behind the book. What's the worst that can happen? So at the end of the day, taking yourself out of that comfort zone is only going to improve you. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you're doing.
One
And
thing
that's a
in front of
Julie
the other.
George.
Yeah.
That's a Julie George statement right there. That
Yeah,
you just
yeah,
do,
yeah.
you know, you just, what's the worst that can happen? I think
Yeah,
she was
take a
very
crack at
adamant about that.
it.
Just take a crack at it.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
it
Oh
is.
my
It's all
gosh.
about consistency and just showing up. I mean, putting one foot in front of the other. It's, looking back at our stats on our podcast, the first episodes that we would air would get, okay, I mean, some downloads, but now every time we release an episode, so many of our past episodes, people go back and listen to those. And it's really interesting to watch that progression, but it just with anything, and this included, when you get that momentum, it starts to build, and you just have to keep showing up and keep being consistent to it. And then that's where the success comes. But not an easy thing to say in any venture where you are putting yourself out there and going outside of your comfort zone, because it is a little stressful, and this is it's a very synergistic job to what Annie and I do every day anyways. I mean, we're having great conversations with people, but from a time perspective, outside of the office, Annie, I think we've talked to each other every single day for the past 5 months. I've talked to you more than I talked to, anybody really, but it's been a lot of fun.
I wouldn't even live in the same town. So it's great.
Yeah. Well, this is what you will find, is that because of what you do and because of the podcast, I now know more about YouTube than I did, like say 5-6 months ago. And
right.
you now are on conversations, whether it's for Condo World or Lexicon or you're at an event, people will instantly recognize you, will recognize the face, the voice, and the name, and it will just open up so many avenues. Again, it's totally the same scenario. 2016, 17, I started the podcast. I did loads of little different styles. At first, I released it in a Netflix where I recorded 6 episodes, released it at once. And then I went to weekly. And then for some bizarre reason, did a daily podcast last year.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
But the offset has been that now the Boostly podcast is in the top 1% downloads in the world of all podcasts.
Wow.
Oh,
that's amazing.
And you think that that's a massive number. But to get in the top 1%, because there are so many podcasts, to get in the top 1%, you only have to have just under 7,000 downloads in the first 10 days. Just 7,000. And that's not a lot if you think about all the other, like Joe Rogan's of the world podcasts, all the massive podcasts that we all listen to and consume. So it's by being consistent, it's by showing up. And with podcasting in particular, it is the only this is why podcast and Audible is so possible. And we talked about this in our little preamble, is that every other form of content, whether it's reading a book, reading a blog post, watching a video, seeing a social media post, that is disruptive. It disrupts what you're doing. You have
to be all in on paying attention.
But with a podcast, it doesn't. And people can listen to podcasts in so many, they consume it. And if they like it, and if it's sticky, and if they keep coming back, they will be with you for the long run. And it will do nothing but good things. If you're still going this time next year and you've got a good bank of it, you will do a lot of things. Number one, it will build networks, communities, relationships within the peers and the vendors within this industry, but also as well, it'll have potential customers come to you as well, and they'll discover you via the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Stuart, obviously, and Pete from the Fuel Hotel Marketing podcast, which is now Travel Boom, and we're going to have Pete on the show depending on when this airs very soon. But that was one of the things that got me so interested in it, was that Stuart said we never had to do any advertising for our marketing services. That podcast was the #1 business development tool that we had, and that's what we were looking at first, but it's become so many other things besides that. I mean, that's definitely a great advantage to it, but there's a lot of great things that come from being able to do this. And when you started the podcast 2016, 2017, I mean, people, the buy-in or understanding of what a podcast was back then was minimal, because even at this point, I mean, podcasting is still in its infancy as far as where it's going to go. I think it's only like 35% of people listen to podcasts. I mean, it's still fairly low in the grand scheme of things, but for people who do listen to them, I mean, I'm an avid podcaster now. Like, I prefer to listen to podcasts over music in most cases when I'm driving or getting ready in the morning. It's just, I'm addicted to it. But you got started so early that you've definitely been able to reap the benefits of that.
Yeah, and I really like what you're doing as well with the audio, but you've also got the video. I think that is that's really, really important, because again, it just opens up so many avenues, and this is where podcast has evolved, definitely. And I feel like by having the video that you can just put up on YouTube and the socials, fantastic. So now for me, coming on here, I'm a massive fan, and I look forward to seeing it at this time in 2023 and beyond, and the growth of it. So well done for getting it started.
Well, thank you so much. And we're kind of nearing the end. And I know we wanted to throw a couple of questions at you. And I actually had one that popped up since you were talking about soccer. So are you a Ted Lasso fan?
Oh, good question, Annie.
So I had to do one thing when I started Boostly, and that was sacrifice something. And I didn't want it to be sacrificing time with the family. And that was my one core thing. I had to sacrifice one thing, and that was watching TV programs. Before Boostly, me and my wife, we used to get the kids to sleep and binge, and I mean binge, Billions and Suits and House of Cards and Game of Thrones, you name it. But I had to cut some out in it, and it was that. And since then, I've never watched a TV series.
Really?
And I have missed the Ted Lasso phenomenon. I know who it is. I've seen the little YouTube clips and the bloopers and whatnot. And obviously, it's Emmy Award winning. And I love the actor Jason Sudeikis. Even though I've cut out TV series, my biggest passion outside of all of this is going to the cinema, going to a movie.
Oh, okay.
I love it more than anything.
Yeah.
In fact, there's one of my favorite things now is that our boys are 9, 6, and 3, and the 6 and 9-year-old are just getting into movies as well. We take them to the cinema. It's amazing, because when you go watch a good movie, everything on the outside world disappears.
Right, absolutely. And that's not the same.
There's none of this. There's no phones. It's like literally
Yeah.
just sit there and you just get absorbed by it. And there's no better feeling. I'm a massive Marvel movie fan. In fact, there's a reference to a Marvel film in this book.
Is it? Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, so no Ted Lasso, but it's okay. He has some really great business tips that you might be able to pick up if you ever do watch the show. So I'm a huge fan of it. But the other question was, so what is the biggest accomplishment, your greatest accomplishment that you're most proud of? I'm going to say your book.
Yeah, I was going to say
one of them. But
book's got to be up there.
Well, that would be the easy answer. That would be the easy. My biggest accomplishment is that I have built a business without having to sacrifice spending time with my family. I mean, that's the main thing. Having 3 boys. I've got 3 boys under 9, 3 boys under 9, and be able to still do the school run first and end, and spending so much time with them, and not having to sort of sacrifice the time with them to build all of this. Is definitely like something that I'm very, very proud of, because you just, you see all the videos and you see all the things of how people have to, like Elon Musk saying you have to eat glass and all that. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to build this on my rules, because I've worked in hospitality. I've done those crazy shifts for many years. I've changed all the bunk beds and did all the things. And that's when I couldn't spend time with Alfie and my wife Laura as much. So yeah, that's probably my biggest accomplishment is that.
Well, that's a great accomplishment, because a lot of people can say that they have built a great business or that they've built a family, but not everybody can say that they've done both of them well and together, in a way that works on both sides. So pretty cool, Mark. Well, we appreciate you being here with us today, and I can't wait to get the audio version of your book. I'm definitely going to download that when I get off of this call. But for our audience, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you and buy the book?
So yeah, definitely. So the book, all you need to do is go to boostly.co.uk/book, and Boostly is boostly.co.uk/book. It will take you to the Amazon store of your country, wherever you are, and you can choose the Audible, or you can choose the Kindle, or you can choose the print. Cool. So that's the best place. And then once you get the book, it will tell you how to reach out to me, because the book is very interactive. I want it to be one where people reach out to me and ask me questions and interact via whatever social media channel, etc. So yeah, go get the book, Book Direct Playbook on Amazon, and then let's chat after that.
Awesome. And if they want to just contact you, you're on LinkedIn also. Is that the best way?
Yeah. Instagram is my favorite one. Instagram is my favorite channel of choice. It's the only app that I've got on my phone. I don't have any other apps on my phone, just Instagram.
Okay. Yeah. You're good on Instagram. So
I love it. I love
awesome.
it. I really do. Like I say, yeah, it's at Boostly UK on the Instagram. Please do come out and say hi.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to include links so that everybody can contact you from our show notes. But for anybody who's listening or watching on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode. And we will see. Oh, if you want to contact Annie and I, sorry, I almost forgot. AlexandAnniePodcast.com. You can contact us through there. Or if you're enjoying the show, we'd love to hear from you. If you could leave a review, that would be awesome. But until the next time, we will see you soon. And thank you again for tuning in.
Bye.